As we head into this weekend's race action, Sam has signed a new deal with Monster Energy and has signed a partnership with the energy drinks company. The deal is set to begin next season, with Monster also expected to bring in a big lump of cash, which will not only obviously go to Sam as he's being the partner with Monster Energy, but also into Jaguar. Now, Jaguar currently are title sponsors with Panasonic, and as far as we know, the title sponsorship will still remain as Panasonic for next season, but Monster Energy might just try and snatch that if they can. Sam is excited to start a brand new partnership with the energy drinks company and is looking forward to working with them as they start to bring in more injection of cash into the Jaguar team. Now, Monster have crucially stated that there is still more that needs to be done before the entire deal is done. Monster have confirmed that the partnership deal between themselves and Sam is done and dusted, but in terms of that cash injection going into Jaguar, they still say that something else needs to be done, which is really fascinating. What more needs to be done in order for Monster to bring in that cash injection and presumably put some sponsors onto a Jaguar car? I have to wait and find out about that, but let's get straight to the race news now and see what's been going on track. As we head into the inaugural Dutch Grand Prix here, there was no data that teams could actually find on the new circuit, as Friday's washout left teams with literally no data whatsoever. However, it is now expected that there is going to be some rain that will come during the Grand Prix, so those teams that didn't go out during Friday when it was raining may be on the back foot, as that rain is expected to fall. Jaguar believe that it's going to be hard for them to win again. Now, Jaguar are currently the team on form and a team to beat, with both Tom and Sam racking up 3 1-2 finishes in a row, with Sam picking up 2 victories and Tom picking up just the 1. Verstappen is excited for his first home Grand Prix here at Zandvoort. He believes the track is an absolutely beautiful track and has been resurfaced and relayed perfectly and can't wait to get out there. And Daniel Ricciardo is very happy with the small amount of track time that he got, as FP3 was also slightly damp, but it did allow for some teams to get a little bit of running in there as well. But with no data being secured for most of the teams, and with rain expected in the race, who knows what can happen? It's time for round number 9 of the F1 Journey season. Let's get straight into qualifying and the race. Hey, what's going on, guys? It is Foxydude here. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the F1 Journey for you guys today here on the channel. Today we're here for round number 8 or 9 of this series in Season 6. We're here for the Dutch Grand Prix, the first time that we're racing around the Zandvoort circuit here on the F1 Journey. And as you can see then, on our first flying lap then, as we open up the DRS now, coming towards the start-finish line here, what lap times do we set around Zandvoort? So 103.2. If you end up enjoying today's video, feel free to drop it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. And without further ado, we're going to carry on with this one then. So here we are then on our second flying lap now here, absolutely nailing that sector. Almost 4 tenths up now on our previous best lap, so really performing well on this lap. Lose a little bit of time on the exit of the corner, but we gain it all back then. About half a second clear now, not going purple though through the first sectors. We're currently in a lonely P12 in this race. A little bit of this back end slide there as we keep pressing onwards now with this car now. Braking into the second to last corner, absolutely fine through there, and then flat through the last corner now, all the way up to the start finish line here. Opening up the DRS now across the start finish line. It's a 102.7, but where did that put us? Here we go then, it is time for round number 9 of the season, the F1 Journey Season 6, for the first ever Dutch Grand Prix, and I am very much looking forward to this circuit. It's probably one of my favourite circuits to drive on the game. Very overcast though, 18.3 degrees, and we saw from the pre-race news that there is rain expected for this Grand Prix. How much rain is going to fall? Is it going to cost people time? And do we need to pit for the intermediate or the wet compound tyres? There are 2 DRS zones on this circuit, but if that rain continues to fall, we won't be able to use DRS. It will end up being disabled. But as you can see then, it is the soft, medium and the hard compound tyres, with the medium and the hards actually being a little bit slower than what we've seen at other circuits, around about 1/10 of a second slower per lap than what we've seen from some other races. Now, we've had the safety car in a couple of events this year so far, and it has definitely caused a spice, but as you can see, there was a Mercedes-Benz on pole position, but which one was it? It was indeed Lewis Hamilton on pole position ahead of the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz in second place then on the grid. Mercedes and Ferrari on the front row. Daniel Ricciardo slots into P3. Our qualifying lap was good enough for P4 on the grid, which is a very promising sign. Verstappen, at his home Grand Prix, gets P5 ahead of Reese in P6 then for the second Ferrari car. Sam is down in P7 with Leclerc in P8. It is literally Mercedes, Ferrari, and then also Jaguar. Rosberg in P9 ahead of Sergio Perez in P10. Again, a bad qualifying session for Audi. George Russell is in P11 ahead of Pascal Wehrlein in P12 for the new improved Porsche car. Mason Woods couldn't match what Verstappen did. He only qualifies in 13th place with Bottas, the highest placed Renault, in 14th, with Hulkenberg down in 15th place and Ocon in 16th for the other Renault car. Lando Norris is in P17 for Aston Martin with Noah James in P18. And then on the back row of the grid, Gasly is 19th and Vettel qualifies right at the back of the grid for the first ever Dutch Grand Prix. But for us then, it's time to see what we could do in the race here. There is a chance on the map that you can see there of some rain falling in this race. So whether it's going to fall or not is another matter. But for now, we're going to take things as a soft to hard pit stop strategy, and we're going to roll from there. We'll see how we get on and hope for the best, really. And as you can see here, I was sort of having a look and seeing if I could potentially do a soft to medium, but we'll have to wait and see if we'll actually be able to do that there. But as you can see then, we are on the grid now here for the start of the Dutch Grand Prix. It is 5 red lights, and it is going to be lights out. Here we go here to start the Dutch Grand Prix. Good initial getaway. Fabulous getaway off the line there from fourth on the grid, now up into second place, around in towards turn 1. Ricciardo tries to come back at us now, but we go a little bit wide on the exit of 1. Ricciardo now makes it through. He's up into second, but we break later around the outside, and as we tuck ourselves in then, it is Lewis Hamilton that leads the Grand Prix. We're now in second place. Ricciardo is in third in this Grand Prix, and then Sainz has dropped down to fourth, I believe. Might have even dropped down below Verstappen as well and all of that. So Sainz with a shocking start then. Ricciardo has a little look then as we go through and towards this corner, and pretty much running on board this entire first lap. You're pretty much going to get to see kind of, not obviously the qualifying pace wise, but very much a rough estimate of just how bloody quick we're really going around this circuit here. But as you can see, Hamilton has already took off into the lead right now, flying away as Daniel Ricciardo continues to hover around the back of me here as we go very wide there in towards chicane, which is not what I wanted to do, because that little section there that we're going through now is probably where I'm fastest on the circuit and where you can really gain a lot of time here as we now get a little bit wider on the exit. But luckily there's a lot of curb there. But onto the exit of the first lap then, Hamilton still leads the Grand Prix. We've pulled away a little bit from Daniel Ricciardo and the rest of the field. Line astern then as we go very wide into the first corner, but we'll have to just deal with that as we go along. Looking after the tyres then and so forth. Looking at the race start then itself, so this is what it was like in perspective from everyone's POVs here. So as we go on to the lights out then, it was Hamilton and myself that actually got phenomenal starts. Brilliant getaways from the pair of us here. We were able to get in front of Sainz. As we go towards the first corner here, we get the move done on Ricciardo, and then Sainz sort of gets pinched a little bit on the inside, so he loses out to Verstappen there. He does the exact same thing as me actually, Max. Swoops around that outside and just gets a much better start. This is on board then with Sainz. And let's see what happened to him then. So he doesn't get a good start anyway, because he's lost out to Ricciardo, and nonetheless in all of that, we then go through and just steamroll up towards turn 1. Go a little bit wide actually. That invites Ricciardo to come back here. Verstappen then uses that outside line to his advantage and gets on through then. On board with Nico Rosberg now here in the second Mercedes-Benz car. He was all the way down in like P9 or P10 here, and he has a great start. He gets instantly past Charles Leclerc. Sam is on the inside line, so too is Reese then on the inside here. So it looks like Rosberg has already passed Sam. He's already passed Charles Leclerc, and if he goes around the outside here, he might just get in on Reese as well. Down the inside into this next backed corner here, and let's see if he can try and get in front of Reese. He does. So that's 3 places gained there from Nico Rosberg off the start finish, off the start in there. So a great start for him. Meanwhile, though, as you can see here on the exit, this was the end of the first lap now. This is Sainz going down the inside of Verstappen now to try and reclaim P3 in this race and sort of help his race a little bit. But Verstappen in front of his home crowd will not let that happen here. And on to lap 2 now of this Grand Prix. Sainz is going to come back at max once again. The BMW power inside of that Red Bull not quick enough to defend in a straight line. And Sainz now goes to the outside this time for this move. And it works beautifully this time around. Sainz realizing the outside line works absolutely perfectly here. Lap 3 of this Grand Prix, and things are going so-so for me at the moment, as Jeff there is currently warning us about rain on the horizon. But my problem is that I'm overheating my front tyres. Hamilton's pulling away. Now Ricciardo's got a very nice run at us here. Is he going towards the chicane now? This is the DRS zone as well. But we brake very late in towards the chicane. Clatter the curb there. Nearly making contact with Ricciardo, but we'll swoop around the outside here. Take the exit curb on our hold. Make sure that we're in front of Ricciardo. Literally swipe across there as we had enough room to do it. Now we've got a bit of a trouble here because we're going onto the back corner. Ricciardo right onto the back of us now as we go onto the long back straight now. Ricciardo here with the DRS open. We are going to have to defend this one quite heavily now. As you can see, going into the first corner, Ricciardo tries to have a look down the inside, but around the outside is much, much more beneficial around this circuit. And we actually pull away a little bit because we cost him a little bit of time. But you can see on the minimap there, Hamilton is flying in this race at the moment. There is no one coming anywhere near him. But the other McLaren car here of Charles Leclerc is in trouble as Sergio Perez in the Audi breezes past now down to the inside into turn 1. But we know how effective the outside line is for all of these cars. These cars being so light and grippy can carry that speed around the outside. And it just allows them to just free flow it through there. We've got a yellow flag though in the background. One of the Renault cars is out of the Dutch Grand Prix, so that's a bit of a shame for them now. We'll have a little look at who it is in just a second here. It's Ocon by the looks of it. His DRS is open, and oh, he gets a little bit of a tap there from Vettel on the back there, but Ocon there out of the Dutch Grand Prix. So that is his race. Unfortunately, done and dusted. He's going to pull over to the side of the circuit any moment now. And he does so then as we now go through in towards the end of this middle sector. And we've got a full safety car then that's come out to play. Hello, hello, hello. Right, okay. Safety car has now been deployed in this Grand Prix. This is very interesting now, what we do in this Grand Prix. We could hold out for the rain to come along here, but now on to lap 7 here, the end of this end of the safety car period. I've decided not to stop in this race. I believe Reese and Sam have both stopped in this Grand Prix. That could cost us, because remember, in the Russian Grand Prix, it worked really nicely for them in this race. We're going to get back going again. Hamilton taking a long time to get going here, and that's going to cost him now. Green flag racing going. We're going to use ERS and also rich fuel mixture. We're going down the inside of Lewis Hamilton, and we've just taken the lead straight away off of Lewis Hamilton. I'm not sure what he was doing there. He just didn't get away. He just didn't launch properly. He launched halfway through the straight. Ricciardo now trying to go down the inside of us into the back of turn 3. Not going to happen on my watch there. Now we're going to have the drag on the straight here. The tyres, luckily for me, would have cooled down slightly because I had overheated these soft compound tyres as we now fly through in this first sector. Ricciardo all over the back of us now. Hamilton drops to 3rd now in this Grand Prix, but crucially, Lewis didn't bolt anywhere near when I thought he was going to bolt. He bolted on the start-finish straight, and he didn't use any of his ERS, and didn't use any of his fuel either. So all I did was just use my fuel and ERS, and I breezed through, and obviously I compromised his line badly enough that Ricciardo had a little bit of a look into him as well. So poor stuff there from Lewis Hamilton, really, really bad. And that's just given us an opportunity now to breeze away into the distance here. Speaking of Lewis Hamilton here, he's now slightly under pressure from the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz here. I'm going heavily defensive to make sure that nobody attacks me going into the first corner. But we are starting to pull away ever so slightly now as Sainz here goes around the outside of Hamilton. And Lewis's race restart has been absolutely compromised now, as he was leading this Grand Prix by a good 4 or 5 seconds. But unfortunately, that's not going to be the case anymore. We're on board here with Reese now, who is getting his way through the traffic, and he's passing, I believe that is Noah James, as Sam is going around the outside of Gasly. So both of those two drivers on a different strategy now to everybody else. It's going to be very interesting to see what they actually do and how they're going to go about it, because it's quite fascinating that they're doing something completely different here. Remember, these guys have stopped now under the safety car, and it's not a bad shout to stop under the safety car. However, there is raindrops falling, and what my thought process was, is I would have stopped in this Grand Prix had there not been any form of rain on the horizon. But the problem is that there is rain on the horizon, and you can see it on your screens right now. The rain is definitely falling here on lap 11 now of this race. It'll help cool the tyres down, but we're still under a lot of pressure here as Sainz now tries to have a little look at us here with the DRS now on the short back straight, should we say, but in towards the chicane now. We get through and we're comfortable in there now as we try and breeze our way through. Now we need to start focusing on defending our strategy, but you can see here that Sainz is now lost a little bit of time there to Lewis Hamilton, and I've decided enough is enough here. Lap 11 of the Grand Prix is enough for me. I'm coming into the pits now for my one and only stop, and I'm going to take a little gamble here. The rain has been falling now. You haven't seen it, obviously, because I haven't needed to show my onboard perspective, but the rain has been falling here. But we've got an issue here. We've actually got a 5-second time penalty that we now need to serve for... I don't even know what we needed to serve that for. We didn't have anything on there. So we've now also been held up horribly by a time penalty that I don't even know where we got. Now, I don't show it in the video, but I can confirm that apparently I made contact with Lewis Hamilton under the safety car restart, giving me a 5-second time penalty. It also gave Lewis Hamilton a 5-second time penalty as well. I can confirm both of us got a 5-second time penalty for colliding under the safety car, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. As Reese now finds his way around the outside of Mason Wood into turn 1. But that's just made our job that much harder now, because we've now got a 5-second time penalty that we have to have served. And Lewis Hamilton also is going to have to serve one as well. I did check the race director, and he did have one. And here is Lewis Hamilton now, who has stopped now for the hard compound tyres here. He would have had to have served the 5-second time penalty as well. And his race just goes from bad to even worse here in this Grand Prix. He goes around the outside here of Hulkenberg now. Lovely overtake there on the Porsche driver, and he makes his way through now as on to lap 13 of the Grand Prix here. This is just a little bit earlier because Hamilton is directly behind me in this Grand Prix, I believe now. As we go in towards first corner here, getting very close to Pascal Wehrlein, literally nearly touching him then. Now we've got Hulkenberg on the pit exit here. This is so close now. We're going to fly through the middle of both Porsche cars there, take the outside for turn 3, and through we go into what is 8th place now in this Dutch Grand Prix. And on these hard compound tyres, I was having a lot of fun in this race so far. Very slippery though on track. That rain is still causing a lot of problems. You can see there that the delta time were 1.5 seconds slower than our personal best lap of this race so far, fully showcasing that the rain is definitely compromising us, but it's just not falling hard enough that we can get away with it. It's just very slippery track conditions, which we have to be very careful of. But now we're on to the back of Nico Rosberg here. And what I found out in this stage of the Grand Prix is that we were absolutely rapid in these mixed weather conditions. Normally, it's the AIs that get that advantage, but for some reason, it was me that was getting the advantage. I was lapping a good 1.5, maybe 2 seconds a lap quicker than many of the drivers out on track here. As Sam has actually pitted for a second time. Reese has now stopped for a second time, but crucially, look where Reese is now in all of this. Reese is now up into P4 in this Grand Prix on medium compound tyres that are, what I say, they're about 9 laps younger than mine. And, well, I mean, I'm on the hard compound tyres, but Reese is on the medium. So Reese has really put himself right back into play here in this Dutch Grand Prix with this strategy, as we're now trying to hunt him down here in this Grand Prix on lap 19 now, with Sainz just up the road, back end slides up it there. You can see as the track conditions are still very slippery. Got to be careful on circuit here to make sure that we don't lose the back end of the car and just go into the wall, which can very likely happen here. Reese now having a look at George Russell here for a move. For second place, it'll be a Ferrari 1-2 if he can make it stick around the outside of the first corner. Reese will try and make it stick now, but Reese loses the back end ever so slightly on the exit of turn 1, and that just allows us to go on through then into what is going to be third place now. We go very wide into turn 3. I tried to get a better line than George Russell. Oh, that's a little bit of a slide then on the rear end as we now try and chase down George in this Grand Prix. One of the McLarens still leading in this Grand Prix, but they're yet to stop for a second time. I think it's Ricciardo, and they're still carrying on actually. But onto the end of lap 20 now. You can already see the gap that we're pulling out to Reese behind, who's on fresh medium compound tyres here. We're now going to go for old George Russell here, make a move around the outside of turn 1. And job done. P3 in this Grand Prix. Question is now, do we have enough pace to catch what is about a 6-second gap to Carlos Sainz? It's a big ask from us to do this, but if we can, in these mixed weather conditions, we need to take full advantage while it is still these mixed weathers. If the rain stops, then I presume the rest are going to breeze on into the distance here. This is back on board though with Reese now, who finally gets past George Russell. Has to go down the inside though. Russell will go on around the outside. Contact made then between Reese and Russell stays in front of Reese. But this time Reese actually holds position now as they go through in towards turns 3 now. You can see there Reese though, unfortunately, not going to make that stick. He's actually got Verstappen then, closing him down as well. But Reese now here with the DRS on this mini back straight is going to go for it around the outside of the chicane now. Will he actually make this one stick? It was a little bit close there. And now towards the inside line here, Reese does get past George Russell. Russell still hangs on in there ever so slightly, but Reese there with much better traction now on his medium compound tyres is finally through ahead of George. The question is though, has Reese got enough of a gap to stay in front of him on the next straight? Because Russell now will have DRS, and the question, or the answer to that, sorry, is no. But back on board now with Sam here, who's going to basically annoy all of the Dutch supporters here by overtaking home hero Verstappen down the inside into turn 1. And funnily enough, that is not going to work because Verstappen is going to swoop around the outside of 1. But crucially, Sam actually got a better run through turn 1. But as you can tell, the outside line into turn 1 is the way that you want to make your overtakes. Otherwise, you aren't going to make them. So Verstappen holds position then. Sam has to wait a little bit longer. And this time around then, with the next DRS zone coming up on the next lap here, so here comes Sam now towards the outside line. He's realised from his mistake here. And even though that they're side by side, Sam will be able to swoop around the outside any moment now. There you go. And that is Sam forwarding himself up the order with Sergio Perez, I believe, or George Russell, one of the two, next up the road for him to go and overtake here. And Sergio Perez, speaking of him, is attacking Hulkenberg now in towards turn 1, but unfortunately, Perez is going down the inside here, which is not the best idea, because that's exactly what's going to happen there. Nico Hulkenberg will hold ground. It seems like everyone is making an overtake around the outside of turn 1. You just can't make it down the inside of turn 1, and this is back on board with Sam now in this Grand Prix here, who is now caught up to George Russell. So it was George. I believe this is for P4 now in this Grand Prix. But annoyingly, Sam's going to go down the inside of George Russell. We know what happens when you go down the inside. You just don't make the move stick. And that is actually one of the McLarens then. The second McLaren that was out front earlier on in this Grand Prix. But back on board with us now. Did I say, oh, well, could we close that gap to Carlos Sainz? The answer is we could, and Reese is miles back actually. He's just crossed the start-finish line now. He's going in towards turn 1. We've exited turn 1, so we're pushing like mad in this stage of the Grand Prix. So the advantage that we've got from everything is really working nicely, but now we're in a tough stage here. I'm very close to the back of Sainz, but I just can't quite get close enough to overtake Sainz, and I want to pass him very quickly in this race, so I'm pushing really hard now to try and get him. But on lap 28 here, we're now into a much closer position now against Carlos Sainz. Down in towards the second to last corner we go here. Now in towards the last corner on the banked, very beautiful banked corner actually, onto the back straight now. We're going to have to use all of our ERS. We'll have to use all of our fuel here to make this one stick now. Sainz goes defensive in towards turn 1. This is the closest we've been now as we go around the outside in towards turn 1. Very close with Sainz's front wing there, but we do move up into the lead of the Dutch Grand Prix, and that is us now really motoring onwards in this Grand Prix. Thank you to all of the wet weather gods. It's not wet enough to rain and put it. It's not wet enough to rain. What the hell am I on about? It's not wet enough to put us onto the intermediate compound tyres, but it's certainly wet enough to allow us to have this advantage in terms of pure performance now. But as you can see, crucially, that rain has now stopped. So we should see Sainz now, who's very close to the back of us, come back at us as one of the Aston Martins has retired from this Grand Prix. We'll get a replay of who that is, and I believe that is Vettel by the looks of it, that is out of this Grand Prix. I can't actually tell because I can't see the number there. But I think it's Vettel that retired from the Grand Prix. I'll be able to know because I'll have the race results up, so I'll be able to see who retired. So we can put that into perspective here as we go back on board here with Sam, who is trying to repass George Russell in this Grand Prix. Remember, he had a look at George earlier in the race, but it didn't work out for him. But this time, though, Sam moves ahead of George Russell for P4 in this Dutch Grand Prix as Sam makes his fight back through the order now as we go back on board here with George, who seems to be struggling now on his hard compound tyres. Those that are on the medium tyres are definitely benefiting now in the latter stage of this Grand Prix. Ricciardo now trying to go around the outside of George Russell here, and George is going to try and fend this one off as much as he can, but it's probably going to be for no use, and it is for no use there as Ricciardo makes his move stick, and he's through ahead of George Russell now in this Grand Prix, and that is Russell dropping down into 6th now. Verstappen is right on the back of him though, as Hamilton here is still stuck behind one of the Porsche cars of Verline. He's been stuck behind him for a long time in this Grand Prix. Finally though, Lewis Hamilton gets the exit, and unfortunately for Pascal Verline, his defense is over, but Hamilton's race has just been absolutely shafted really after what has been a silly 5-second time penalty for both him and me. But speaking of me now, I said that the medium compound tyre runners were getting into their own now as the rain had stopped falling in this race, because we've just set a personal best first sector, and that's true to say because here's Sainz now. After we overtook him, he's now right on the back of us here, and the chance for another Jaguar victory is currently under threat here by the charge of the prancing horses as we now go through into the very final stages of this Grand Prix now, as we go through into the second to last corner now, trying to defend the position against Carlos Sainz, literally putting everything foot flat to the floor now. The ERS is a big problem though. You can see here that we've only got 3% left, but crucially that's a very nice exit, and we should be able to cope with Sainz as we go in towards the first corner now. We do just that then, defending against Sainz, but lap 35 to 36 here, Sainz all over the back of us now. In fact, Reese is right on the back of us too in this Grand Prix actually. You can see him there, he's just entered DRS zone. He won't be in range now, but we're going to have to go defensive here against Sainz. There's Reese in the background. The two prancing horses fancy a 1-2 in the Dutch Grand Prix as we go and cover the inside line, the outside line, sorry, turn 1. Sainz tries to go for it down the inside of turn 1. He doesn't make it stick though. We hold the outside line, keep his line as tight as possible into turn 1, and then use the power that we've got in the back of the Jaguar to hold on here. Speaking of holding on to that last lap now, or to the end of the last lap here, Reese has closed that gap now between myself and him. On the mini-map there, Sam is very much under pressure from one of the McLarens and Ricciardo, but we are going to come across the line then, and we are going to win the Dutch Grand Grand Prix with a personal, with the fastest final sector on that last lap there, but that was such a close affair between myself and the Ferraris then, and we got very, very fortunate, because if it hadn't rained for a longer period of time, we wouldn't have been able to have caught and passed Carlos Sainz, but we do manage to win then. As you can see, Sainz was only 4 tenths back, and Reese was just 6 tenths back there, so top 3 covered by just 6 tenths of a second. We made it count when it rained, because when it rained, we were way, way faster than everybody else. Sam recovered up to P4 in this Grand Prix. Actually, in fairness to Reese and Sam, they were 19th and 20th after the safety car came in, and they made a 2-stop strategy work very nicely for them, finishing in P3 and P4. Ricciardo finishes in 5th in this Grand Prix. He'll be quite disappointed with that, actually. George Russell does recover, though, from P11 to finish in P6. Verstappen will be disappointed because he didn't finish where he started, but it's a good sort of haul of points for a Red Bull car that's not quite there yet, and especially his home Grand Prix as well. I'm sure the fans will be delighted. Rosberg finishes in 8th, Hamilton in P9. Again, Hamilton with an awful Grand Prix. Even if he took away his 5-second time penalty, he'd still finished in P9. Pascal Wehrlein finishes in 10th place, but it's crucially more points for Porsche. Reese was the man that set the fastest lap of the race in this race. He set a 104.7 to take that fastest lap. But if we look at the rest of the race results, Sergio Perez didn't score points today. Bad race for Sergio Perez as Hulkenberg finishes off the race in 12th place. Charles Leclerc for McLaren down in 13th place. A bit of a weird race for him, actually. I'm not sure how he managed to finish all the way down there. Mason Wood is in 14th place for the Red Bull car. Bottas finishes in 15th for Renault ahead of Pierre Gasly in the Ford. Norris in 17th for Aston Martin ahead of Noah James in 18th place for Ford. That confirms then that Vettel was the Aston Martin that did DNF in this Grand Prix. Ocon is the man that DNFs as well for Renault, which obviously brought out that safety car. Now though, as we look into the Drivers' Championship, then that gap at the top of the championship is now just 1 point between myself and Sam. It is 142 points now for Sam, 141 points for us in the 2 Jaguars. Reese is on 115 points and still remains the closest man to challenging us 2 Jaguar drivers, with George Russell in 4th place for Audi, only on 80 points, really falling back now in the championship race, with Daniel Ricciardo 5th for McLaren on 78 points. Sainz, with that impressive P2 podium, gets himself up the order a little bit. He's now on 68 points, with Rosberg and Hamilton 7th and 8th on 62 points and then 59 points. Charles Leclerc didn't score points today, so he's on 52, and Sergio Perez also didn't score points today, so he remains on 46. And the next Grand Prix that we're going to be going to is Silverstone for the British Grand Prix. Now into the Constructors' Championship then, and that's a 4th win in a row now for Jaguar. It wasn't a 1-2 though, but the little streak that we've got going on here really working nicely, and that Constructors' advantage is now 99 points. 283 points for Jaguar, 184 points for Ferrari. McLaren are on 130 points. In fact, the fight between McLaren, Audi and Mercedes is very, very close, with McLaren on 130 points, Audi on 126, and then Mercedes 121. Red Bull are on 48 points, finally picking up a couple of points to start to weather the threat of Renault and also Porsche. Ford and Aston Martin, though, still are yet to score points in this current championship. But with that being said and done, we're going to go and have a look at the post-race notebook, see what all the teams and drivers have had to say after this crazy Dutch Grand Prix. The 9th round of the Formula 1 season has concluded with Tom taking Jaguar's 4th race victory in a row as their mid-season streak continues to hit new highs, as Tom mastered the wet weather conditions to lap over a second a lap quicker during the dry tyres on a wet track period to take the victory. However, Ferrari just missed out on a 1-2 finish after the pair of them put on a late charge against Tom. When the rain started to fall, it was all Tom, but as soon as that rain cleared away, the Ferraris came back into their own but couldn't get past the Jaguar in the end. Now, both Tom and Lewis Hamilton have stormed to the FIA steward's office to complain about the 5-second time penalty that both cars received for apparently colliding under the safety car. Now, this was a very unusual penalty that was awarded to both drivers. However, as far as we know, the stewards believe that both of them unnecessarily made contact with each other after trying to slow each other down during the safety car period. But both Tom and Hamilton claim that there was no contact made at all, and both Jaguar and Mercedes showcased from the data that there was no damage to either of the cars. So why was the penalty put out in the first place? Max Verstappen is very happy with his home race results today. He felt like the weekend went absolutely brilliantly, and he felt like he outperformed his Red Bull car. I was really happy with the pace. And finally, Sebastian Vettel has called for Aston Martin to start getting on top of the reliability issues if they are to challenge further down the line for points and even victories later in the line for Aston Martin. He feels like the car has got a very good baseline, but they're struggling to develop it because they're focusing on reliability, and that then brings all of the development back. He feels that if we can start sorting out the reliability, then we've got a great chance of getting further with the team. But that's it for round number 9 here at the Dutch Grand Prix. Next round is going to be the British Grand Prix, where the gap of the championship is just 1 point. Will Sam extend his lead at the top of the championship next time round, or will Tom fight back and retake the lead of the championship? And can Ferrari build on this momentum and start to put some pressure on Jaguar? But for now, guys, I'm out. Take care all.